What is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is Dr. Hummus Tech, and today we are going to compare two very good mid-range phones over here. In the first corner we have the Samsung Galaxy A52s 5G. This is the third version of the A52 lineup, and I think this is the best you can get in terms of the A lineup right now. And in the other corner over here we have the Realme GT Master Edition. This is the younger brother of the Realme GT. So in today's video, what we are going to do is of course go through the every key specs and features side by side with each other and help you to make your purchase decision by end of this video. So yes, without further ado, let's just get right into it. So first things first, let's check out those prices, and I will also include the USD prices as well. So starting here with the Realme GT Master Edition, the base model will sell for about 1499 ringgit Malaysia, and if you get the higher spec model at 8256GB, you can get it for 1699. Next up here we have the Samsung Galaxy A52s 5G, and this one here in Malaysia only sells at 8256, so you can get it for about 1899 ringgit Malaysia. So check with your local sellers in terms of the specs that you might get in your own place. Alright, so now let's talk about the build and design on both of these two phones. So starting with the build over here, both of them are actually using a plastic on the back over here and a glass on the front. Over with the Realme GT, it's not yet really specified what type of glass they are actually using, but with the 52s 5G, they actually specify that they're using a Gorilla Glass 5 on the front. So that actually means that you're going to get more scratch resistance, more drop resistance with the 52s 5G. In terms of the design, let's talk about the Realme GT Master Edition first. Here you do have a very nice and slick design. Over here it does look like a, kind of a suitcase. It does have your laser engraving over here, your signature. So yes, it does look really awesome. And in terms of the power button over here, you do have it over here. You have your volume rockers here as well, and of course you do have your headphone jack. Over here with the 52s 5G, you also do have a headphone jack. You have your stereo speaker setup. You do have your volume rockers on one side, and also on the same side you do have your power button as well. In terms of the design, with the awesome white color over here, it does look really nice. Also very clean, very simple, very minimalistic. So yes, if you want a clean approach, I think the 52s 5G would suit your taste even more. Alright, so now let's talk about the display on both of these two phones. So starting here with the size, the A52s 5G over here does come with a 6.5-inch display, whereas over here on the Master Edition it does come with a smaller 6.43-inch display. Both of them are quite similar because they are using a Super AMOLED display which can go up to 120Hz. In terms of the brightness, I have to admit that with the Samsung device over here, it actually is brighter compared to the Master Edition. 1000 nits if you want to go for those numbers, compared to the 800 nits you can find on the Master Edition. Other than that, in terms of the colors, in terms of the contrast, all this other good stuff, the deep blacks and all these things, they are quite similar to each other. So yes, display on both of these two phones are really good. Okay, so now let's go on to the speakers on both of these two phones. So with the Master Edition, it actually doesn't have a stereo speaker setup, so it's only one down-firing speaker over here, which is a bit of a bummer. Whereas over here with the A52s 5G, it does have a stereo speaker setup. So over here, Alright, so in terms of speakers, yes, the stereo speaker definitely does help, but in terms of the bass and clarity, I do feel that with the A52s 5G, it does sound better. Alright, so next up here, let's talk about the battery on both of these two phones. So over here with the 52s 5G, it does come with a 4500 mAh battery, whereas over here on the Master Edition, 4300 mAh battery. So in terms of battery performance, to be honest, they are quite similar. In terms of over here, it does drain quite fast for the first, the first 80 to 100%, whereas over here it's a bit slower, but it tends to drain faster after that point. So in terms of just battery performance, I think both of them are pretty similar. But one thing that is different though is of course those charging. So over here with the GT Master Edition, it does come with your 65 watts of super dart charge. So it's able to charge up from 0 all the way to 100% in just over half an hour in about 30 minutes. And here with the A52s 5G, it only does have a 25 watt brick charger right off the box. Also, both of these two phones, they do have your under-display fingerprint scanner, and also it does have your face unlock. So they do work quite fast, I would say, but I think with the Realme GT over here, it is quite, very sensitive to your face. But over here, it does kind of need your perfect angles. In terms of the fingerprint over here, as we can see with the GT Master Edition, it is definitely faster compared to the A52s 5G over here. One more thing to note is that the A52s 5G does have an official IP67 rating. Alright, so now let's talk about the internal specs on both of these two phones. So yes, they are quite similar to each other because they are using the same Snapdragon 778 5G. So yes, they do have your 5G support. Other than that, this one over here with the Master Edition, it does have two variants over here. You can either get the 8GB RAM with 128GB of storage, or you can either get the other one over here, the 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. And yes, you have to choose wisely over here because this one doesn't have your micro SD expansion. Over here with the A52s 5G, this one is quite unique because you can either get the 6 or 8GB RAM variant depending on where you're from, or you can either get the 128 or 256GB of storage. And one thing really cool about this is that you can actually include your micro SD with this over here, something again that the Master Edition doesn't have. In terms of just performance, both of them are actually quite similar, and I've actually done a separate video to compare the speed, RAM, and also a few Geekbench tests and also a 3D Mark test between both of these two phones. So I'll leave a link up above and also down below so you guys can check that one out. Okay, so now let's talk about the software side of things over here. So with the GT Master Edition, it does come with your Realme UI version 2.0, whereas over here, ONEUI 3.1. So yes, they do have a lot of features between both of these two phones. Of course, here you do not have your Samsung DeX mode, which is one of my major features that I really do like on Samsung phones. But in terms of just customization, personalization, both of them are really, really good. And of course, you will enjoy it on both of these two phones. Over here, you do have your Samsung Pass, something that you don't have over here, but this one doesn't have your Samsung Pay. So in terms of just the features, I think both of them are pretty much very equal. And yes, finally, let's talk about those cameras. Alright, so as we can see in terms of layout, both of them are pretty much different. This one you have a tiny dot at the center, whereas over here on the GT Master Edition, it does come at the side. In terms of the megapixels over here, both of them do have the same 32 megapixel, but this one over here f2.2, whereas on the GT Master Edition f2.5. Both of them can record up to 1080p at 30 FPS, but over here it can go up to 4K at 30 FPS. Over here with the Samsung A52s 5G, it does come with a quad camera setup starting with a same 64 megapixel f1.8 sensor. It does come with OIS as well, a 12 megapixel ultra wide f2.2, a 5 megapixel macro shooter f2.4, and another 5 megapixel depth camera f2.4. So with the Realme GT Master Edition, it does come with a triple camera setup starting with a 64 megapixel f1.8 sensor, an 8 megapixel f2.2 ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel f2.4 macro shooter. Now let's check out some photos from both of these two phones. Now let's check out some shots with the main lens, and to be honest, they do look very similar in good lighting conditions, but of course in trickier lighting conditions over here, I think this is where the Samsung phone definitely does pull ahead. As you can see on the back over here, it does control the lighting better compared to the Realme GT Master Edition. Going on to some ultra wide shots over here, both of them do a very decent job. But I gotta say that the A52s definitely does look a bit better, and it also does give you a wider field of view. The GT Master definitely does look brighter and looks a bit more presentable compared to the darker and more contrasty A52s. Overall, in terms of ultra wide, I think both of them do a very decent job. Going on now, next one here to some digital zooms over here, and both of them can go up to 2 times at this point. But what I can say is that the GT Master does look a little bit more washed out and grainy compared to the A52s. The A52s can go up to 4 times, whereas the GT Master can go up to 5 times. And again, the A52s can go up to a maximum of 10 times, while the GT Master is stuck at 5 times of digital zoom. At this point, to be honest, both of them do a very decent job and still do give you a good amount of details. Going on next here to some selfie shots, the A52s definitely does give you a lot of details, and of course with the GT Edition, it does give you a little bit more skin smoothing even if I did lower down to 0. Going on to some night mode shots over here, this is some shot taken with night mode off, and when you turn the magic on over here, both of them do a very decent job. Overall, in general, I do feel that the A52s definitely does pick up more details, and it does look less grainy compared to the GT Master Edition, and it follows through even through the main lens. Going on to the ultra wide over here, as we can see, the A52s again pulls ahead from the GT Master Edition, collecting more details and again giving you a sharper and less grainy shot compared to the GT Master Edition. Now let's check out some videos over here, and both of these two phones can record up to 1080p at 30 FPS, and at this point, to be honest, both of them do look pretty similar. Going on to 1080p at 60 FPS, I gotta admit that the A52s definitely does look a bit more shaky compared to the GT Master Edition, but in terms of color and dynamic range, I think both of them do a very decent job. Both of these two phones again can record up to 4K at 30 FPS, and at this point it gets really shaky on both of these two phones, but in terms of details and in terms of shadows, I think both of them are pretty similar. Not to say very great, but of course decent enough at this price point. And now switching on to some selfie video over here, both of them can record up to 1080p at 30 FPS, and I gotta say that the A52s does a really good job, but it definitely does look a bit more shaky compared to the GT Master Edition. And lastly over here, the A52s can record up to 4K at 30 FPS. It definitely does look a bit more shaky, but it does give you a little bit more details. So that is it between the Realme GT Master Edition and the A52s 5G. And yes, the ultimate question is which one to get. And you know what? It's quite surprising, and this is the first time I'm actually saying it, but in terms of just value, I think over here with the Galaxy A52s 5G, it does make more sense. Yes, it is a little bit more expensive, 200 ringgit more compared to the GT Master Edition, about 50 USD more, but actually you are getting way more stuff compared to the GT Master Edition. You do have your stereo speaker setup, you do have a very nice camera setup over here, you do have a nice display as well. So yes, all in all, I think I'm going to spend a little bit more just to get the A52s 5G. So yes, these are just my thoughts. Do leave yours in the comment section down below. If you guys did enjoy this and also want to see more of this type of videos, do click the like and smash the subscribe button down below for more videos like this in the future. Do also follow me on my social as well, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also here on YouTube at Dr. Hammerstack. So that is it. This is Dr. Hammerstack. Stay safe, take care, and wash those hands.